Welcome to RevengeAmy. When I finally signed the papers and held the keys to my dream apartment, it felt like the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and stubborn determination. My name is Rachel Hayes, and at 27 years old, I thought this was the moment my family would finally see me, not as the average daughter, not as the one who could be overlooked without consequence, but as someone worth celebrating. The apartment itself was everything I had ever wanted. High ceilings that seemed to stretch into possibility, windows that spilled sunlight across polished hardwood floors, and a kitchen that promised gatherings, laughter, and warmth. I imagined my parents, Susan and Richard Hayes, stepping inside and admiring what I had built on my own. I pictured my sister Amanda commenting on the view, maybe even a rare smile of approval from her. And my brother Ethan, the golden boy of the family, clapping me on the back in congratulations. For once, I wanted to be seen, so I planned the perfect housewarming. Days of preparation blurred together as I scrubbed every surface until it gleamed. I placed candles in the windows, each flame flickering like a promise of joy to come. I filled the kitchen with the smell of roasted meats, fresh bread, and spiced vegetables, enough to feed 20 people if I needed to. Wine glasses sparkled on the counter, waiting to be filled. A bouquet of white lilies and red roses stretched across the dining table, the centerpiece of an evening I believed would be unforgettable. When the clock struck 7, I put on music, something soft and welcoming, and checked the group chat. No new messages, but I brushed off the silence as a simple delay. Families are late sometimes, right? I poured myself a small glass of wine and waited by the door, excitement buzzing in my chest at 7:30 past. Then 8. I refreshed the group chat again. Still nothing. I sat down at the table, the candles flickering, the food cooling by the minute. My excitement gave way to uncertainty, then to a slow, creeping dread. The silence of my phone roared louder with each tick of the clock on the wall. Help our channel reach our first 1,000 subscribers by liking and subscribing. Your support is what keeps us going and allows us to continue telling inspiring stories of justice, healing, and self-worth. Now let's get back to the story. By 9, my chest felt heavy, like the air itself had turned against me. I told myself they must have been caught in traffic, or maybe there had been a last-minute change. But something inside me whispered otherwise. My hand shook as I unlocked my phone and opened social media. And there it was. Photo after photo filled my screen. My parents, Susan and Richard, smiling brightly in front of Ethan's new apartment. Amanda, my sister, arm in arm with him, laughing like they had discovered some private joke. Glasses of champagne raised high, a cake being cut with my brother's smug grin stretching wide across his face. In one shot, my mother kissed his cheek, her pride unmistakable. In another, my father lifted his glass as though toasting the entire world for gifting them such a perfect SON. My eyes stung, though no tears fell. My body felt frozen in that moment. They hadn't just forgotten my housewarming. They had chosen to celebrate Ethan instead. Chosen him again as they always did. Not one message to me. Not one apology. Not one explanation. That I stood alone in my sparkling kitchen, the flowers still fresh, the food untouched, the music turning hollow in the emptiness. The laughter in those photos seemed to echo in my head, overlapping with the silence that swallowed my apartment whole. My name is Rachel Hayes. I am 27 years old. And if you think you know how this story ends, stay tuned. Because what happens when a family who leaves you in the dark suddenly needs your light? That night, I turned off the oven, silenced the music, and sat in the dim glow of candles meant to warm the people who never arrived. My phone buzzed once, then again, until the notifications blurred into a constant vibration in my hand. For a moment, I thought maybe they were finally acknowledging their absence, maybe apologizing. But no. The first message from my mother, Susan, read only 4 words. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. They hadn't cared enough to walk through my door, hadn't cared enough to spare one evening for me. Yet suddenly they needed me. The demand in my mother's text was sharp, not remorseful. My chest tightened, but instead of replying, I let the phone screen burn bright with her words. That I said nothing. And in that silence, sharper than any insult, I realized something. This was only the beginning. The next morning, sunlight poured across my apartment, spilling golden light onto the floorboards I had polished for a party that never happened. The candles had burned down to stubs, the food sat in the fridge untouched, and the flowers on the dining table still bloomed defiantly, As if mocking the emptiness of last night. My phone, however, was anything but quiet. Notification after notification stacked on the screen. A litany of missed calls, voicemails, and text messages. Most of them were from my mother, Susan Hayes. Pick up. Don't ignore me. This is serious, Rachel. I scrolled through the desperate words, sipping coffee slowly, the bitterness of the brew grounding me in a way my family never had. For a group of people who couldn't spare one evening to acknowledge my milestone, they now acted like I was the very center of their universe. I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I opened my social media again, letting myself linger over the photos from last night. Ethan, my brother, beaming as he cut into a cake. Amanda, my sister, posting a caption that burned in my chest. So proud of our golden boy. Finally settled into his new place. Family over everything, red heart. Family over everything. Except me. The words pressed down on me like a weight. I had been erased, invisible. And yet, less than 12 hours later, my mother's frantic calls demanded my attention like I was suddenly indispensable. By noon, curiosity got the better of me. I played one of the voicemails. Her voice crackled through the speaker, shaky and stripped of its usual superiority. Rachel, something's come up. It's complicated. We need your help. Please call me back. I almost laughed. Help. The same woman who once told me I was just average. The same parents who skipped my graduations, who clapped louder for Ethan's every minor accomplishment than they ever had for my major ones. Now they needed me. I tapped my fingers against my mug, the rhythm sharp and deliberate. My silence spoke louder than any curse I could have hurled at them. Then came another message, this one longer. We made a mistake last night. We should have been at your place. But there's something important we need to discuss. It's about the family finances. Call immediately. Finances. There it was, the real reason. Not guilt. Not love. Not regret. Money. A bitter smile tugged at my lips as I leaned back in my chair. They hadn't abandoned me out of forgetfulness or even thoughtlessness. No, it was deliberate. They had chosen Ethan again, as they always did, showering him with loyalty, with presence, with praise. And now, when the weight of that choice came crashing down, they turned to me, the dependable one. This time, I wasn't going to bend. I let the hours stretch long into the afternoon, the notifications piling up like debris. When I finally answered one of Susan's calls, her voice came through tight, trembling. Rachel, thank God you picked up. Listen, your father and I need to talk to you about a small situation. Her pause on the word situation told me it was anything but small. It's about your brother's apartment, she continued quickly. Ethan stretched himself a little thin with the down payment. The bank called this morning. They're asking questions. I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Of course. Ethan overspent. Ethan lived beyond his means. And now, naturally, the family wanted me to clean up the mess. Before I could respond, my father, Richard Hayes, chimed in on speakerphone. His voice boomed with the same authority he had used my entire life to silence me. We thought you could step in, Rachel. You've been saving, right? You're responsible. If you covered some of the payments for a while, it would give Ethan room to breathe. I nearly dropped the phone. Me? After they skipped my housewarming to toast him? After 15 years of being invisible? Don't be dramatic, Susan snapped, her syrupy sweetness vanishing like fog under sunlight. You're single. No kids. You have a good job. You can spare it. Family sticks together. A laugh ripped from my chest, sharp and bitter. Family sticks together? I echoed. You couldn't even sit at my table for one night. You toasted him while I sat alone in the dark. And now you want my money. For the first time in my life, there was silence on their end. The kind of silence that tastes like fear. Finally, Richard cleared his throat. Rachel, don't make this harder than it has to be. It's just money. Exactly, I said coldly. My money. My life. And for once, it's not yours to take. I hung up before they could reply. My hands were shaking, but not from guilt, from power. For the first time, the leverage was mine. That night, I turned off my phone and sat in the soft glow of my apartment. It wasn't the celebration I had imagined, but it was something stronger. A quiet reclamation. The next morning, however, the storm only intensified. My phone lit up with twice as many calls, voicemails stacking one after another, texts arriving in frantic waves. My mother's tone grew more desperate with each one. Rachel, please. Pick up. We can't afford to ignore this. If the bank gets serious, your brother could lose everything. By the time she showed up at my apartment uninvited, her knuckles rapping sharply against my door like she still held ownership over my life, I knew they weren't going to stop till I cracked the door open, staring at her carefully constructed smile. Sweetheart, she said, her voice coated in syrup. We didn't mean to upset you. But you don't understand how serious this is. Ethan could lose everything. I crossed my arms. He should have thought of that before signing papers he couldn't afford. Her smile faltered. We told him you'd help. You've always been the dependable one. Please, Rachel, just a little loan. We'll pay you back. The word loan hit me like a bad joke. My mind flooded with memories. Birthdays skipped, graduations ignored, holidays spent in the shadow of Ethan's achievements. Suddenly, their plea wasn't about family. It was about control, the same control they had always tried to wield. Behind her, Richard appeared in the hallway, his voice hard and cutting. Stop being petty. You owe this family. And something inside me snapped, not with anger but with clarity. No, I said evenly. You owe me. You owe me 15 years of dinners where I sat ignored. You owe me every holiday where I was too average to be noticed. And you owe me an apology that'll never come. Susan's eyes glistened, but it wasn't guilt. It was fear. She could see it in my posture, in my words. I wasn't bending this time. That I opened the door wider, not to welcome them in but to push them out. The bank's your problem, not mine. Good luck. The door shut with a finality that echoed like freedom. For once, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the untouchable one. By the end of the week, the calls multiplied. Not just from my parents, Susan and Richard, but from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My phone lit up day and night with variations of the same plea. Rachel, can't you just help a little? Your brother Ethan is under so much stress. Don't be so cold. Cold. That word burned through me. Where were they when I sat alone in my sparkling apartment? Candles flickering for a party no one attended. Where were they when I walked across stages at my graduations, looking for my family's faces in the crowd, only to see empty seats? They had left me in the cold for years. And now suddenly I was cold for refusing to hand over my savings. I didn't answer. Not one of them. Instead, I returned to my routine. Work. Friends. Evenings spent in the warmth of my apartment. The one I had chosen, decorated, and paid for myself. Every corner of it was mine. Each lamp, each piece of art, each chair reminded me of a life I had built without them. But still, the buzzing phone on my counter was like a swarm of bees I couldn't fully escape. Every vibration was another reminder of the storm I had left outside my locked door. One voicemail from my mother finally caught my attention. Her voice shook in a way I had never heard before. Rachel, please. The bank is threatening foreclosure. If word gets out, it'll ruin us. People will know Ethan failed. We can't let that happen. Please just think about the family name. The family name that I almost laughed out loud. The same name that had left me off invitations. The same name that had skipped my birthdays, ignored my milestones, silenced me when I wanted to be heard. Now it dangled before me like a leash they wanted me to slip back into. That night I sat at my desk, pulling out the paperwork from my apartment. My deed. Paid in full. No co-signers. No shared names. No debts. Just mine. That I held the papers in my hands for a long time, running my fingers over the bold print where my name was written clear as day. Rachel Hayes. I took a photo of it. The angle perfect, the lighting warm from the lamp beside me. Then I typed out a caption and saved it. Built this life without anyone's help. Some stories tell themselves. I didn't post it. Not yet. But just knowing it was there waiting gave me power. Because power wasn't just in refusing them, it was in showing the world that I had already won. For the first time, I wanted them to watch me shine without their shadows. Easter weekend arrived. The message I had drafted sat saved on my phone, temptation gnawing at me each time another voicemail came through. On Saturday, my brother Ethan finally called me himself. His voice was thinner than I remembered, the arrogance chipped away by desperation. Rachel, he said. I know we've had our differences, but you can't just sit back and watch me lose everything. You're my sister. You're supposed to help. His words hung in the air like smoke. Slowly I replied, my voice calm and sharp. Did you think about me when you all skipped my housewarming? When you toasted your new place while I sat alone? Was I your sister then? The silence on the other end told me all I needed to know. He didn't have an answer. That night, I opened my social media account. My finger hovered over the post button for a long moment before I finally pressed it. The photo of my deed, crisp and clear, appeared with the caption I had written days before. Built this life alone. Some stories tell themselves. Within hours, the likes and comments poured in. Friends from work cheered me on, proud of my independence. Old classmates messaged congratulations. Even distant cousins, people who hadn't said a word to me in years, chimed in, some shocked, some supportive, and I knew without a doubt that my family had seen it. 2 morning, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Rachel, take it down. People are asking questions. You're humiliating us. I typed back, funny. I remember asking for the same thing when you humiliated me. Difference is I have proof. And I'm not deleting it. The weight shifted again. For years they had held power with silence, favoritism, and exclusion. But now their silence was the prison, and I was the one holding the key. For the first time, their shame wasn't my burden. It was theirs alone. By the end of the month, the ripple effect of that single post spread everywhere. At church, whispers followed my parents down aisles. At Ethan's work, co-workers teased him about moving into an apartment he couldn't afford without begging his sister for help. Even Amanda's carefully curated social media facade began to crack. Friends unfollowed her, tired of endless bragging that now looked hollow under the truth that I hadn't said a word beyond that caption. But silence, paired with proof, was louder than any speech I could have given. Then one evening, the pounding came at my apartment door. Through the peephole I saw them all, my parents, my brother, and my sister. I opened the door just enough to lean against the frame. Well, I said coolly, if it isn't the family that suddenly remembers where I live. Susan's mascara was streaked, her tone desperate. Rachel, please take it down. We can't go anywhere without people whispering. Your brother's reputation is ruined. We're drowning in humiliation. Even Richard's voice, usually so commanding, cracked when he added, we made a mistake. We should have been there for you. But don't destroy us over one night. The irony was almost too much to bear. One night. For me it had been years of nights. Birthdays ignored, holidays spent in shadows, milestones left unacknowledged. I let them stand in the silence, the air thick with irony. Then I said softly, you taught me I was disposable. Now the world sees the truth. You disposed of me first. Ethan tried to step forward, but I raised my hand, halting him in his tracks. You don't get to rewrite this anymore. You left me alone once. Now you get to feel it too. Their eyes dropped, heavy with shame. I shut the door in their faces, the sound echoing like justice. And this time I didn't feel forgotten. I felt untouchable. Thanksgiving used to be one of the hardest holidays for me. Year after year, I would sit at the family table, invisible in plain sight. My mother Susan fussing over Ethan, my father Richard leading toasts to his achievements, Amanda snapping pictures of the perfect family. While I sat quiet, my presence a mere placeholder. I had grown used to the hollow feeling of watching everyone celebrate a golden boy who wasn't me. But this year, for the first time, I didn't dread it. My apartment glowed with warmth. Candles flickered softly in the corners, casting a golden hue across the walls I had chosen. The art I had hung, the furniture I had paid for. Friends bustled in and out of the kitchen, laughter spilling down the hallway as dishes were placed on the table. The air carried the rich scent of roasted turkey, garlic mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. Every seat at my table was filled, not by blood relatives who had forgotten me, but by people who valued me for who I was. There were no empty chairs waiting for the Hayes family to stroll in late. No anxious glances toward the door. No ache of being overlooked. Instead, there was belonging. As we raised our glasses, I felt something I hadn't known in years: peace. No performance. No pressure. Just joy. Across town, though, the story was very different. A cousin sent me a photo from my parents' house. Their turkey sat on the table, burned on the edges. Ethan and Amanda glared at each other from across the room. Susan forced a brittle smile while Richard stared at his plate. The caption read, "It's not the same without you." I didn't reply, because that was the truth. They had built their holidays, their family pride, their very sense of unity on my silence and my willingness to serve as the forgotten one. And when I stopped showing up, when I drew my line, everything they thought was solid collapsed. Later that night, after my friends left and the laughter faded into a comforting quiet, I stood by my window, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail, to my mother's voice, heavy with something that almost sounded like regret. "Rachel, I'm sorry. We should have been there. We lost sight of what mattered. Please call me." But I didn't. Because poetic justice isn't loud. It doesn't always come with shouting or vengeance. Sometimes it's quieter. It's the raw turkey on their table, the whispers in their social circle, the silence of a daughter who finally chose herself. They had wanted me invisible. But instead, I had built a life too bright for them to dim. Weeks passed, and the fallout only deepened. At church, people whispered behind Susan's back about the daughter she had left out. At Richard's workplace, colleagues smirked about his son who couldn't manage money without begging his sister. Ethan's pride, once untouchable, crumbled with every comment, every joke, every pointed glance. Amanda's social media, once a highlight reel of curated perfection, grew quieter and quieter as followers peeled away. All of it stemmed from one simple truth I had put into the world. I had built my life alone, and I didn't need them to validate it. The irony was almost too sharp to swallow. For years they wielded silence as their weapon, ignoring me, excluding me, pretending my accomplishments didn't exist. But now my silence was their punishment. My refusal to engage, my decision not to answer their pleas, became the loudest statement of all. They couldn't spin it. They couldn't rewrite it. They couldn't cover it up. And they knew it. One night the pounding on my door returned. Louder this time. Desperate. Through the peephole I saw the same faces. Susan, mascara streaked. Richard, shoulders slumped. Ethan, jaw clenched. Amanda, lips pressed into a thin line. I opened the door just enough to lean casually against the frame. "Well," I said with a smile, "if it isn't the family that finally remembers where I live." Susan's voice cracked. "Rachel, please. Take it down. We can't go anywhere without people whispering. Your brother's reputation is ruined. We're drowning in humiliation." Richard, usually so forceful, spoke with a crack in his voice. "We made a mistake. We should have been there for you. But don't destroy us over one night." One night. The words echoed inside me. For me it had been years of nights, birthdays with candles blown out alone, milestones ignored, dinners eaten in silence while Ethan basked in the spotlight. I let the silence hang thick and suffocating before I answered softly. "You taught me I was disposable. Now the world sees the truth. You disposed of me first." Ethan stepped forward, his mouth opening to protest, but I raised my hand. "No. You don't get to rewrite this anymore. You left me alone once. Now you get to feel it too." Their eyes dropped, heavy with shame, and I closed the door. The lock clicked into place, sealing not just the night but a chapter of my life. And this time it didn't feel like rejection. It felt like justice. Thanksgiving that year wasn't about turkey or tradition. It wasn't about appearances or family names. For me it was about freedom. I had finally learned that family isn't defined by blood or by name. It's defined by the people who choose to show up. And when the Hayes family chose Ethan over me, they made their decision as so I made mine. And as I curled up on the couch that night, the city lights glowing outside, I realized something I had been waiting my whole life to feel. I wasn't the forgotten one anymore. I was the one who walked away. By the end of that month, the ripple effect of my single post spread everywhere. I hadn't said much. Just one photo of the deed to my apartment with a caption that spoke for itself. "Built this life alone." Some stories tell themselves. But paired with proof, my silence was louder than any argument at a church. I heard whispers had started. People asked Susan how she could forget her own daughter's housewarming. They asked Richard why Ethan had been given so much while I was left with nothing. My parents were forced to smile politely while shame clung to them like smoke they couldn't wash off. At Ethan's workplace, his colleagues teased him. "Didn't your sister bail you out? Golden boy, huh? Looks like your sister's the real star." His pride, once so untouchable, shrank under every sideways glance. Even Amanda's carefully curated image began to crack. Friends unfollowed her one by one, tired of her endless bragging when the truth was now out in the open. The Hayes family's perfect picture was splintering. And all I had done was hold up a mirror point one evening. The pounding came again at my door. Heavy. Insistent. Through the peephole I saw them all, Susan with mascara streaks, Richard looking smaller than I had ever seen him, Ethan tight-jawed, Amanda clutching her phone like a lifeline. I opened the door just a sliver, leaning casually against the frame. "Well," I said, a smirk tugging at my lips, "if it isn't the family that suddenly remembers where I live." Susan's voice trembled. "Rachel, please take it down. We can't go anywhere without people whispering. Your brother's reputation is ruined. We're drowning in humiliation." Richard's voice, once booming with certainty, cracked. "We made a mistake. We should have been there for you. But don't destroy us over one night." One night that I let out a short, bitter laugh. For me it hadn't been one night. It had been years of nights, birthdays, holidays, milestones where I was invisible while Ethan was celebrated. "You taught me I was disposable," I said softly. "Now the world sees the truth. You disposed of me first." Ethan stepped forward. Desperation etched on his face. But I raised my hand, stopping him cold. "You don't get to rewrite this anymore. You left me alone once. Now you get to feel it too." Their eyes dropped, heavy with shame. I closed the door with finality. The sound echoed like justice, but the fallout didn't stop there. As weeks passed, the Hayes name, once polished and proud, became a quiet scandal. People whispered in grocery store aisles. My parents avoided familiar coffee shops, afraid of overheard conversations. Ethan's colleagues no longer respected him. Some openly mocked him. Amanda's posts drew cruel comments instead of admiration. And me? I carried on with my life. Work, friends, dinners filled with laughter. My phone still buzzed, but now I smiled at the irony. The same people who had once left me in silence couldn't handle mine. Still, one night, I found myself listening to another voicemail. This time, Susan's tone was stripped of all authority. "Rachel, I'm begging you. Please take it down. People are asking questions we can't answer. Your father and I can't escape the whispers. Ethan can't show his face at work. Please, sweetheart. Think of the family. Think of the family." The same family that had never thought of me. That I remembered the night I sat alone in my candlelit apartment, waiting for them to arrive. The food had gone cold. The music faded into emptiness. And somewhere else in the city, they were raising glasses, toasting Ethan, smiling in front of cameras while my name never even passed their lips. That night I had learned the truth. Family wasn't about words. It wasn't about names or appearances. It was about showing up. And they never had. So now I didn't show up for them either. When I logged into social media again, I saw the comments still rolling in on my post. Friends, colleagues, even distant acquaintances celebrating me, telling me how inspiring it was that I had built a life on my own. Their encouragement filled the space where my family's support had always been missing, and I realized I didn't need the Hayes family to validate me. They needed me. Their pride, their image, their family name. All of it depended on my silence, my compliance. And when I took that away, they crumbled. One night, I sat by my window, city lights blinking below. My phone buzzed again. A message from Amanda this time. "Rachel, please. Can't we just put this behind us? You're ruining everything." I almost laughed. Put it behind us? That's exactly what they had done to me for years. The difference was I wasn't asking them to hide their pain. I was letting the truth shine. The truth that I had built my life alone. The truth that they had left me invisible. The truth that I wasn't disposable anymore. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging to be seen. They were. The Hayes family had spent years telling me I wasn't enough. That Ethan was brighter, Amanda more lovable, the family name bigger than me. But with one act of defiance, one refusal to bend, one proof held up to the world, I showed them all that I was enough, and I wasn't going to let them forget it. Thanksgiving had come and gone, but the ripples of that night never stopped spreading. For once, the holiday had been mine to enjoy. My apartment glowed with warmth, filled with friends whose laughter spilled out of the kitchen and echoed through every room. The table had been full, not only with food, but with people who valued me, who showed up without hesitation. There were no empty chairs, no anxious glances at the clock, no wondering if someone might eventually walk through the door. Everyone who mattered was already there. We raised our glasses, clinking them together in celebration, and I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. No pressure to perform. No invisible seat at the table. Just belonging. Across town, the Hayes household told a very different story. A cousin texted me a photo. The turkey on their table was burned around the edges. Ethan and Amanda glared at each other across the room. My parents forced tight smiles, their faces lined with tension. The caption beneath the photo read, "It's not the same without you." And I realized, it wasn't the same because I wasn't there to play the forgotten role they had always assigned me. Later that night, when my friends left and the laughter faded into a gentle quiet, I stood by my window overlooking the city lights. My phone buzzed again with another voicemail. Susan's voice came through, heavy with regret. "Rachel, I'm sorry. We should have been there. We lost sight of what mattered. Please call me." But I didn't. Because poetic justice doesn't always come loud and explosive. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the silence of a daughter who finally chooses herself. It's the whispers at church. It's the burned turkey at a holiday table where smiles can't hide the cracks. They wanted me invisible. Instead, I had built a life too bright for them to dim. Months passed. My family still tried, though their efforts grew weaker. Susan sent texts asking for a fresh start. Richard left voicemails about how family should forgive. Ethan's messages, once arrogant, turned into pleas. Amanda tried to tag me in old photos on social media, as if nostalgia could erase the truth. But I had already made my choice. And for the first time, the choice wasn't about them. It was about me. I didn't hate them. Hatred would have meant I still carried them with me. Instead, I felt lighter, like I had finally put down a burden I'd been carrying for far too long. Why life wasn't defined by being the Hayes family's forgotten daughter. It was defined by the life I had built, the people I had chosen, and the peace I had earned. One spring evening, months after it all began, I pulled out the deed to my apartment again. I framed it this time, placing it proudly on the wall above my desk. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded of what it represented: not just ownership but independence. Not just an apartment, but a home I had created without anyone's help. It was proof that I was never disposable. Proof that I had always been enough. And proof that walking away had been the right choice. The Hayes family continued to unravel. Ethan's financial troubles deepened. My parents' social circle shrank as whispers turned into cold shoulders. Amanda's online image, once polished, crumbled under the weight of unfollows and questions. But I didn't watch with bitterness. I didn't smile at their downfall. I simply didn't look back. Because justice for me wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. And I had it now. This past Thanksgiving, my apartment was once again filled with laughter, with people who mattered. No empty chairs. No waiting for validation that would never come. As I raised my glass, I realized something profound. I had spent years waiting for my family to choose me. But in the end, the only choice that mattered was my own. I chose myself. And that made all the difference. Thank you for listening to Rachel Hayes' story with RevengeAmy. If this story touched your heart, help our channel reach its first 1,000 subscribers by hitting the like button and subscribing. Your support fuels us to keep sharing inspiring stories about justice, healing, and self-worth. Remember, sometimes justice doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, justice is having the courage to walk away and choose your own light.